Thanks everybody for tuning into the IA podcast. And for today's interview, I'm joined by Hans Morten Buff, who's an award-winning immersive mixer and producer. I think most people know him for his work on Peter Gabriel's latest record, I.O., for which he won the Grammy for Best Immersive Audio Album. So let me, join the many people who I'm sure have congratulated you since you won the award. But for today's interview, we're going to be talking about a new project called Tearjerkers, which I understand that you developed specifically for immersive audio. And this album, I'm very glad to say, is available for sale as a high-res download in the IAA shop, so you could hear it in its full resolution glory. So Buff, tell me a little bit about this new project.
Well, it's kind of the oldest immersive project I've ever done. So when I got into immersive, well, when this happened, about 7 years ago now, um, I wanted to make and find out, how this would work creatively. That was kind of my idea. It wasn't about, okay, I can now take all the mixes I've done so far and I make them immersive, but it was like I can make new music in immersive. And I did this within the framework actually of a master's program, which, anyway, long story, but I did an album of binaural songs, of my songs. And I decided to just liberate all those, lost children that have gathered in my song basement from 30 years of doing this. So some of the songs were literally, from the really early 90s, and some were written just for the project. So that's what happened, and I made this for binaural. And then quite a few people used it to demonstrate immersive. People like Virtuoso and stuff, companies that make really cool tools for immersive. And, like all children, they have to leave the house at some point. So I figured now would be a good time. And I made, over the last year, I did like Atmos versions, did little updates, and did dedicated binaural mixes again. So I'd never have to think about stereo once. So it worked out pretty well.
I saw like in the little like liner note booklet that comes with it, there's like a quote like no stereo music was harmed in the making of this record or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no thought was harmed by stereo during the making of this recording. It's true. I have, by the way, I should say I have no problem with stereo whatsoever. It's a wonderful format, and all works fine. But this album, there was not a single thought about, okay, how we're going to do this in stereo, whatever. And the once or twice I was asked, I was really kind of dreading the idea of having to take this music and to shove it down two little tubes rather than having the entire room to work with. So I've never done it.
So I understand you did some tracking at Abbey Road when you were recording this. So how did that come about?
That was a wonderful ruse on my part. So see, I've worked at Abbey Road quite a bit. I haven't in a while, which is a shame. But one of the many things I did there was I did workshops. And one institute I did this for is the Abbey Road Institute in Paris, which is a wonderful recording school. So we'd go to Abbey Road Studios and, I'd show the students how to mix and record drums or whatever it is. And so when I was doing the Tearjerkers album, was doing my, immersive project, I went to the principal of that school, Jean-Philippe Boisson, a lovely man, and asked him, so what do you think about this? I record my stuff at Abbey Road and your students can watch, and then I talk about it, how I did it, and you give me the day at Abbey Road. And I fully expected him to go like, well done, dude, great idea, haha. And he went like, are 2 days enough? And I said, 2 days are enough. So I got to work at Abbey Road Studios, and the beauty about that was not only Abbey Road itself, which, apart from the whole hubbub, the rightful hubbub about, who worked there, is just an ace studio to be in, I mean, the first time I was there, I'm a big Beatles fan. I was like, Beatle for about an hour. And then I totally forgot about it and just enjoyed the amazing recording experience. Anyway, be that as it may, it being Abbey Road, it has that magnetic attraction to so many musicians. So I could tell my buddies, look, I'd love to have you play on my record. I'll record at Abbey Road. I don't have much money. So do you want to come yourself and not get paid? Which, I did pay him in mixing services and such, but so it was like that worked really well. So all these wonderful people from all walks of my life came by and played in there. It was just, I got into this because I like the Beatles. I really got into recording, not into immersive, but like into recording in my job, my profession, because I loved listening to that stuff, and then I loved reading about how it's done. And so to be there and look outside that, Studio 2 window that's on the second floor and see my buddy Mikael play my song at Abbey Road Studios, that was awesome. That was clearly one of the highlights of my life. And of his too, because he turned 60, I think, when we were there. So a good time was guaranteed for all.
So, the last time that you and I talked, which was right around the time that the Peter Gabriel record came out, we had this whole conversation about how you were telling me that when you got into the process of doing the Atmos mixes of those songs, you would actually like overdub extra components to enhance the immersive mix. And of course, you did this, with Peter's permission and participation. And I assume the process was similar for this record because, like you just said, the recordings originated from before you were thinking about immersive.
The recordings didn't, just the songs.
Okay.
So the songs, just the ideas, everything, virtually every recording was not a stereo recording. Every one of these recordings was started with immersive in mind. And, some of them weren't finished. There's a song called My Sweet Siren Sings, which is kind of the first single as well. And that was a song I wrote with my friend Steve Larson many, many moons ago. And it was never quite finished. It was actually one of those dreams people have, where you kind of wake up and something from the past pops up and you kind of resolve it, and then you wake up and it was just a dream. So I'd have these dreams about finishing that song. Literally, I had regularly, not like every week, but like once a year at least, where I dream about finishing that song, and I'd had a fabulous idea, and then I'd wake up and it was gone. I was like, so that was one of the creative things that I did right in the beginning, to take those songs and give them a new life. And the life developed through immersive thought. So like that song specifically is like, it's like a moving universe that just kind of rolls down the path of the song. And then there were other songs. There's a song called Maybe on it that I wrote specifically for immersive. And that song wouldn't work at all outside of immersive, because it's the idea of the song, the narrative is switching between worlds. You go like from a small world to a really big world to a point world to a small world over. So that part is in there, just kind of like it is on, let's say, in stereo with something like, Money by Pink Floyd, where, it starts with a movement and then it's big and then it gets small and big. I'm not comparing myself to Pink Floyd, but I'm just saying the mode of recording and arranging and the song itself, the telling of the story, the musical story, are totally interwoven.
Yeah,
One can't live without the other.
I noticed listening to it, there are definitely parts in the record where you're like changing the size of the sound fields. Like all the sound will go into the center channel and then it'll expand out and fill the entire room. Yeah, I mean, stuff like that is really cool. I always tell people, like, there's in a 714 system, there's 11 speakers. You should use them all, right?
Yeah, it's true. Use the whole world, why wouldn't you?
So when it comes to like actually going into the studio and that you're going to eventually be mixing the material you're recording in Atmos or in another immersive format, what are like steps that you can take during the recording process to enhance the final product? Like, did you use any like immersive mic techniques, like things like that?
I did. I think for those of you who produce stuff, I think the one thing that I tell people is that you can start tonight. You can start making an immersive piece of music tonight on your laptop with headphones. That's the beauty of it all. You don't need to run through these spec sheets and whatever. It's just boing, go. But the one thing you will need eventually is more tracks. So, where regular stereo tracks would have like 60, 70, 80 tracks if it's a lot. My immersive stuff starts at 150 or so. because I record as much as I can. For example, um, I have room setups like you asked, so I have like, special arrays and let's say they have 8 mics, which is a normal amount that I found is doable in smaller rooms and for pop music. It isn't like one of those enormous, classical setups that are like 9 feet by 9 feet with 13 mics at 2.5 grand each. Um, Something doable on a professional level. So that's 8 tracks right there. Now, if I still record, let's say, a guitar, an acoustic guitar directly, I have another 2 mics. So I have 10 tracks all of a sudden. Now, if I want to make it big, like the middle of that song you mentioned, maybe, where it gets big and then goes to one spot and stuff, I want to double it and quadruple it because I don't only have 2 speakers, I have many. So in order to make it fat, I need to have more stuff. So if I record just the guitar player with a room mic 4 times, that's 40 tracks for you, just for the guitar part. And that just adds up. But yeah, I do that. The beauty of it is I don't really think about mixing it at the end. It's like when you go from a stereo project to immersive, it's quite the thought process how you remix and rearrange it. But when I produce an immersive from the beginning and I record an immersive, then the mix is just a charm because the arrangement just kind of presents itself, and the 3D world is right in front of you. So I think that's the way to do it. You go in, you record, you think about, if I want to demonstrate this one musical idea or if I want to have that work, um, what do I need to capture? Do I need the room? Do I need density? Do I need loneliness in some spot? Do you need, a change between big and small? What is it? And then I record it accordingly.
Hmm.
And if I go back, let's say to Peter Gabriel stuff, I think one of the most effective songs on that album is a song called Playing for Time, which for most of the song is really open. It's just a piano and a voice and a bass and the occasional string bit. And the reason it is so effective is because I got to be there for the recording. I got to be there for the piano, and I got to add my immersive weirdness, and I got to add a specific array for the strings, and I got to do a little bit with the bass. So everything was just like, whoop, put it there, and off you go. And everything else is just, what you add on top of that is just a bit of whipped cream. It's not the cake itself that you need to bake. It's great.
Yeah. Well, to go back to another thing we talked about with regards to the Peter Gabriel album as well is that the way that the streaming services expect these deliverables for immersive is that they tie it to a stereo version. So it creates these challenges sometimes
Yes.
for producers where you have to exactly align the stereo master to the immersive master. And in the case of Peter's stuff, because there were 2 different stereo mixes, I think what you ended up doing was creating like a whole separate entry on Apple Music just for the inside mixes. So relating that to the Tearjerkers album, and you were telling me that you didn't actually create a stereo mix for this album. It was entirely conceived for immersive. So in order to get it up on the streaming services, what did you end up having to do?
Well, I made not stereo mixes, but 2 channel mixes, which were dedicated are dedicated binaural mixes. So all you need is you need to put on some headphone, and you're kind of in a really nice immersive world that sounds better, I feel, than any binauralizer that Dolby or Apple offer, because it's a combination. It's just my technique. It's a combination of what works best, and most of all, also some of it in that mix is not binauralized. So, for example, the voice and some of the drums are still in the head, and then the binaural is around it, which has a unplanned but very awesome side effect that you can play it on speakers, and it doesn't sound like crap. It doesn't sound like that mushy mess that you get when you play. If you listen to a binaural mix that came out of a render or something on speakers, you go like, "Oh, what just happened?" If I had to make a dedicated stereo mix, it would still be better, I think, for stereo, but it's doable for speakers, but it's meant for headphones. So there's not a stereo mix of my album at all, but you can listen to it as a stereo mix if that's your thing.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that about how some things are not binauralized because from my own experience mixing Atmos, I've noticed that I think the most powerful feature of the Dolby version of the binaural is that you can turn the binaural parameters off on some elements. Like sometimes if you have an element placed in the front, like something like the lead vocal or the drums that are really core to the song, sometimes the binaural processing just sort of makes it sound like hollow and distant, and a lot of times it sounds best to just turn it off. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the problem with that is that if you do that in your mix, the Apple binauralizer won't use
Yes.
your binaural decision. So all of a sudden, you got to keep an eye on that. You got to keep an eye on that whatever you're doing with that binaural setup that the Dolby renderer provides is working with the Apple version as well. Because I assume at least that a substantial part of my listeners is going to be wearing Apple headphones. I mean, it'd be interesting, when you put on Apple headphones now and listen to my stuff on Apple Music, then when you switch between Dolby and stereo, you'll hear two different binaural versions. My dedicated one, which will be whoop, the stereo, and then the binaural version of the Dolby Atmos mix. So that that'll be a ride. I wonder what people will like better.
So even if you go into your iPhone settings and you turn off spatial audio and you listen to the Tearjerkers record, you're still hearing a binaural representation of it.
That's correct.
Um, well, I also wanted to take this opportunity because we also talked about a little bit about this last time in to for you to talk about other mixes that you've done because I know you were just telling me that you've been really busy doing immersive work, but the unfortunate thing about Apple Music is they don't tell you who mixed these records in Atmos. And one that I know you did, and the only reason that I know it was yours was because you posted about it on social media, was Haddaway's "What Is Love," which I thought sounded incredible in Atmos, and everybody knows that song.
I'm glad you like it. I mean, that was a great project. The song itself didn't have that many parts in it. So what happened is, one of the problems is with 90s music that it's like that cusp between all tape and all digital. So a lot of mixes were done with like the keyboards and the samplers running live and then just the vocals, let's say, coming from tape, and then people just didn't back it up. It was kind of hidden runny type stuff. So it's really tough to get that back together if you want to do it again. So the Hathaway people did what's called a rebuild. So they kind of the same people that produced the original stuff, or the same team, I should say, did a new version of it based on the old arrangement. And so I got the entire sessions and I got to do some cool stuff. Some things like What Is Love, I think is cool. It's not worse than stereo, but some stuff is just enormous. I mean, it's a mystery to me why not many dance clubs have embraced the idea of immersive, because if you're in the middle of that and the kick is just hitting you from all sides, I mean, dang, what a party. Well, I did that, and I'm still very connected to the Scorpions, not just immersive. I do all kinds of their stuff. And the Scorpions turned 60 this year. Not the guys, the band turned 60 this year. Um, so there were all kinds of things that were happening that haven't been released yet. The one that's being released next is a live show they did in July in their hometown of Hanover in front of 45,000 people, which I recorded. Um, and I recorded the audience in super duper immersive. So that is a ride. So once you get to hear that, and I feel like it's now for the first time that the Scorpions and any other artist of that magnitude can go see themselves at a show, because the immersive experience makes it possible for them to be in the audience and enjoy the show, the best possible version of the show in there. So I've done that. I don't know how public the other stuff is I've done, but it's going to be ace. It's going to be happy. It's going to be released early next year. It's actually a remix of one of their early albums. I think that's I could probably say that, but I won't say more. Not one of the hit ones, but like one of the quirky ones. And that was a treat. That was a total treat. And then I guess the biggest project that's coming to an end, I've spent on and off a year working at Real World Studios with a fellow named Adrian Utley. He is the guitarist of a band called Portishead. And we did an immersive project together, which is just coming to fruition, will be presented in Stroud in England in mid-October. It'd be great.
To go back to the Tearjerkers record, so right now, My Sweet Siren Sings is out as a single, and then the full release is on October 3rd, you had told me?
Well, it is out, as you said. It's
Yes.
out on
Yeah.
your wonderful platform, and it's out on a streaming service, has been since July, called Pure Audio Streaming, which is run by, amongst others, by my friend Stefan Bock. And it's a streaming service that is non-compressed, an immersive one. So, I was honored to be one of the first projects on that streaming service. But yeah, right now it's like, so My Sweet Siren Sings is out, and then the album will be out this Friday, which is October 3rd, um, on all streaming platforms. There's even a little video on YouTube for My Sweet Siren Sings, and I hope people will enjoy it. And you know what? I'm not doing this because I want to be a rock star. I became an engineer because I thought I'd be a rock star in waiting, but I would very happily switch the sides. But I'm really proud of this, and I hope the songs can develop some type of life of their own, and also I can use it to say to everybody now, look, this is what I feel I can do, and if you want to achieve that, listen to this, and I can tell you how to do it.
I
You
mean,
know?
I can certainly say from having listened to it that if you've got an immersive system, or even if you don't, like you said, a lot of people are digesting these mixes on headphones, but on the full 714 setup, it's a trip. There's parts where the
Cool.
drums march around the room, strings and backing vocals above you. I mean, it sounds incredible. So I personally highly recommend it.
Thank you so much. Do you have a favorite song?
Two by two after two.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah, that was kind of my experiment whether you can be funky in immersive, and the answer is yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I tried things that, you don't do. For example, like why would you a bass is always a solid middle. It isn't in that song, and it works really well. It's really impressive. Not what I did, but what you can do in immersive. And I'm very happy it worked so well.
Yeah,
And I
I
have
mean,
some cool people on it too. Really cool helpers. Should I tell me who? Yeah, I'll tell
sure.
you.
Go ahead.
I'll just show up. Fuck it. I know all these great people, and that was one of the wonderful things. That one wasn't done at Abbey Road, but the guitars on there by my friend Ingo Povitzer, who's one of the best guitarists I know, and he works for the Scorpions. Mike Scott, who was Prince's guitarist and Justin Timberlake's. Um, I just asked actually before I did this, I asked one of the two background vocalists, Sarah Brown. She's just amazing. What what uh, what credit she would like to have, when I show off. What am I going to put in parentheses behind her name? And I knew she sang or she sings with Simple Minds, and she went, I think Pink Floyd. People will know Pink Floyd. I'm like, people will know Pink Floyd. That's true. So I have Sarah Brown of Pink Floyd and Simple Minds fan singing on it, and her, I think, niece, Petra Luke, as well. Lovely, lovely people. Great friends, great music.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last point I'll kind of leave this with is that, so often we talk about taking these older records and adapting them for Atmos, like a retrofit process, if you will. And a lot of times, like, we've talked about, it can work really well if the song is very densely arranged. But sometimes there is sort of not a shortage of parts to move around because it was never conceived to be mixed that way. But when you actually conceive music for this format from the beginning, I think that's when you can get kind of the ultimate result. And I hope, more people follow in your footsteps. We're starting to see, like, Justin Gray just released his record Immerse that he recorded specially for it. And I hope we see more of that kind of production as, more and more people adopt this format.
I agree, and I hope the Recording Academy is nigh upon us to think about next year's Grammy. And I'd really, really, really appreciate it if they thought about immersive as a way of making music. Justin Gray is one of them. He's an amazing guy, amazing album. Um, Steve Wilson, who for some reason never gets mentioned enough because he's kind of got the market cornered on doing really cool British remixes in Atmos, but also his own stuff. He does that really well. It's his own style, works around, and if I'm considered, I'd be very honored myself. But to have that more and more up there, that would be great.
Yeah, his record, The Overview, is also a great example of something that feels like it was made for this format. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Always great to see you.
You too.